Hey guys, welcome to episode 5. We have another question. This one talks more about user data, so let's dive right in. Hey Brian, I keep hearing on the news that companies are always after my data. Why do they want my data so bad, and why is it so bad that they are keeping this information in exchange for free services like Facebook's social networking and Google giving me free access to things like Google Maps, Gmail, and Google Drive? Excellent question. So, First off, I want to say it is not necessarily bad when companies are keeping information and data on their users. However, it does open up the door for abuse. When you have a company that tracks everything that you do, everything that you visit, your habits, what time you use the computer, what you search for, things that you click on, they're kind of just like keeping tabs on you. And I want to give just kind of like an example. If you're walking around in public, you're walking down the street, and somebody starts following you with a clipboard and they're writing down notes of every single place you go and the time you go and what you talk to people about in public, it might make you a little bit nervous. What are they doing with the information? Why are they putting in all this effort to learn more information about you? There's a lot of things that maybe you just don't want your information to be publicly displayed. But this does open up another topic. You may have things like an app, like a flashlight app, that for some reason needs access to your contact list. Why would a flashlight application want access to my contacts? Well, they want to attach names to numbers and build social networks and see who's connected to who and things like that. And that's where I get really nervous. Companies like Google and Facebook, I'm cautious when I provide them with information. However, I do understand it is an exchange of, on Facebook you enter in your likes, your interests, you post about things, you add hashtags, keywords, pictures, locations, you check into places, all these different things, and they use that to try to build kind of like a profile to serve advertisements towards your interests. I'm sure that you've done a situation where you've gone Googling for something. Let's say I'm looking for car parts for my vehicle. I Google it a few times, I look at different things, and they have the little add us or like us on Facebook page on their site. Well, why would I like a page like that? Well, what that little like toolbar does is it connects to Facebook and says, hey, look, Brian Fadouk is on this site looking for car parts for a 2012 Sonata. So what happens? They start gathering the information and they say, oh, look, if he's looking for car parts, well, there's a couple conclusions we can draw. His car might be older and needs maintenance. He might just be looking for parts. He's probably a do-it-yourself kind of guy when it comes to repair. So maybe we could find some advertisements within our companies or agreed contracts that specifically talk about that. Maybe a part store locally wants to appear on my Facebook feed as like, hey, come by and get 10% off. Or, they could be just giving me advertisements for, hey, look at this brand new vehicle that just came out, in case you're looking for one. And it makes me more likely to consider that since that ad was targeted specifically to my needs. So, that's one of the big things that really makes, data use a little bit concerning, though, because if they can gather those types of pieces of information from you, what else can they figure out? Maybe if you look at somebody else's profile and you start looking at all their photos, or, I can even paint you a weirder scenario. You look at somebody's vacation photos from 2 years ago, you kind of have a stalker-like mentality of it. And Facebook now knows that you may have some weird vested interest in this person. And it kind of opens up the door of, do you think Facebook should be allowed to know that? Or, if you start, spending more and more time with somebody and you're developing a relationship with them and your GPS coordinates, on the Facebook app happen to match that you spend more and more time at their house, Facebook now knows that you're either really good friends with this person or you might be romantically involved or any of these other things. And what if they come to false conclusions? Do you really want companies to hold this information and make assumptions about you? And even the larger consequence that I like to bring up is several times companies like Facebook have been hacked and a lot of their data has been stolen. If you want to search for a company called Cambridge Analytica, they were able to pull a lot of information from users without their consent. So now we're dealing in a situation where Facebook may track weird and odd things that you do, possibly things that could be misinterpreted, and then all of a sudden that data gets stolen. What happens then? People have information about you that maybe might not be ideal. And, it's not what happens today, but 10, 15 years down the road when, we're able to analyze data and really interpret things of what companies were looking for. You could just find someone's data, that's been leaked or hacked and run it through a sophisticated algorithm that can tell you a lot about the person, even if it's wrong. So these are some of the weird portraits I like to paint about it. I'm not saying things like it's a particularly a horrible idea to allow companies to use your data, especially in exchange for services. I use Gmail. Google, by being the controller of my Gmail account, is able to see what my emails talk about. And every once in a while, I get an advertisement popping up that talks about some of my interests: music festivals, technology, teaching information, all these different things. And I just kind of look at that and be like, huh, wow, they know a lot about me. They're kind of making predictions on things that I might want to participate in down the road. And it's a little creepy. But at the same time, as long as you're cautious and you're aware that you're being monitored when you use these things, I think it's okay. But you also want to look towards the companies that don't have, large reputations. Like, for example, that flashlight app. What are they doing with your contact information? Chances are they're just selling it, and you agreed to the terms of service the first time you opened it up when you had, 500 lines of legal text that you can barely even interpret. So do you pull a lawyer in to look at every single one of your apps? No, you don't really do that because that's very inconvenient. Should you? Probably not, because it's just a ridiculous thing, but these are the types of things where companies take your information, we don't know what they're doing with them exactly. But like I said, Facebook, Google, probably Amazon, the big companies, they have reputations to defend, but that doesn't make them infallible. So, my suggestion is, if you have data that is important, maybe you want to look into some privacy-oriented options. VPNs kind of just shift who can look at your data. Some VPNs guarantee or have a provable way to show that they don't keep records on you, which I am of course skeptical of. It may require a very large amount of technical knowledge to even interpret their method for doing that. So you're kind of relying on their promise. Incognito mode on your web browser. A lot of companies actually give you the right to delete yourself from their records. Once in a while I go into Google and I just go into, their targeted advertisement platform, and I just click through the option and say, please delete, all of my records. And it will give me less targeted search results and less customized features and options. But I'm kind of willing to rebuild those things in exchange for my information not being kept. But the information's really never gone because we know that tech companies keep archives of all of their data from all of their years. So when I ask to delete it, it's removed from their system, but it's not really gone. Like, I don't know if it's provably deleted, like, for good. So, it's just one of those things where if you are concerned about this, instead of using Google Chrome, which is powered by Google, which collects data, you could use an open source web browser like Firefox. There's privacy-based solutions. You can look around, see what exists, VPNs, incognito mode, open source browsers. There's a lot of different things that, it's more of a spectrum too. You're not going to be paranoid and not let anybody ever know anything about you. It's almost impossible to do at this point. But, where do you lie on that line? Do you try to be more anonymous with things, or do you kind of give up your anonymity for convenience? And everyone's going to find where they lie on this spectrum of data and user security. So hopefully that answers your question in a way. Just to kind of reiterate, is it scary? A little bit. But, you also should not be operating on the internet, especially without some extensive knowledge and, research. You shouldn't be doing things that, maybe can come back to you. It's, for most practical purposes, you can kind of consider it comparable to being in public. You're not going to be a rude and miserable person in public because that can hurt your reputation. Just like you shouldn't be doing rude and miserable things through free services like Gmail Facebook, all these different things because you're giving them your information. And I don't think that they're going to be likely to just kind of clean slate all of your stuff. In some countries and some parts of the world, these are actually rights built into their citizens' lives. Europe has a pretty solid, process with that. I believe it's GDPR or GDRP. I always mix up the letters, but it's another thing where they actually advocate for that. So I'm hoping we at least get discussion in the United States because we're in a situation where we could probably benefit by having some sort of defined, base level of rights for our user data. So, all right, hopefully I've answered it, and thanks for watching. And if you have any more questions, feel free to toss them in the comments.